I was a semi-skilled, if you stretch it, blue-collar guy. I still feel blue-collar. High-low driver who was just living, figuring it out himself with no guidance of the Lord. I went to work one day as a young guy, 24, and I couldn't get back home because I was involved in an accident whereby I ended up blind, totally blind. My whole frontal lobe was crushed. That's right here. That's the forehead. When I got out of surgery, they had put me back together again here. About the top of the nose up, I was wrapped in bandages right up to the top. But I knew there was something wrong with my sight because blindness is inside. There's a darkness here that's inside. It's a lack of a connection on the inside. I could tell this is too dark. I've never seen this kind of dark before. And sure enough, when they took the bandages off and I opened my eyes, there was no difference. I never dreamt of being blind. It wasn't the last thing on my mind. It was never on my mind. It is as though, looking back at this, that the Lord said, let it go this far, no further. I felt destroyed. It took, I don't know how many months I did this to see that this really happened. This is a dream. It's got to be a dream. But I found myself in a spot where I can exercise every muscle in the body, but I can't exercise my eyes to make them work again. But the Lord had a plan here. I'm going to therapy. There was a young woman in there who was a Bible-believing Christian therapist. He used her to persist in accompanying me and being my friend. One Sunday in May 1981, I went to her church. I sat way in the back. She was in the choir, so I was alone in the back. Must have been 500 people clapping their hands, singing these type of songs one after another. That blew me away. But I heard the gospel. Somehow I heard the gospel there at that church. The man was talking about Pilate and how Pilate was asking the crowd, and I wasn't versed in the Bible, but he was asking at that time. He was asking them, what are you going to do with this man? What should I do with this man called Christ? Then the story came to, they had this criminal, Barabbas. And which one do you want? You've got a law. I can give you Christ. Pilate tries to do this, but the people say, no, give us Barabbas. Release Barabbas. Well, this other guy, crucify him. And what he ended up making evident was Christ died being mindful of you. Mindful of you. The extent of my spirituality back then was simply, I do believe in heaven and hell, and I don't want to go to the latter. Hell. He actually was mindful of me in this fact, that I was a sinner and that I needed something that only he could do for me, that I couldn't do or no man or woman could do for themselves. He could do it. He did it. Well, I didn't care anything about it before, but when I heard that talk, I knew I cared about it then. And I went down to what they call an altar call. I went down. And that was the beginning of the change. It took 10 years before I could get a Bible that I could read. 10 years. My case is very unusual. You know what? You know how I count it? Was this the judgment of the Lord? Did he judge me? Well, maybe. It says in there someplace, I believe, in Psalm 19, his judgments are true and altogether righteous. If you've been afflicted and that affliction has made you wake up, of course you will count it a blessing. He gives us time to come past our rabid anger and all that stuff that accompanies it, the depression, the sadness, the doubt, all these things. He'll give you the staying power because this is how many of us come. And whether this thing was a judgment of the Lord or just happened because stuff happens in this life, in either case, I've been blessed the way I reckon it. Because if his love was going to get through to Robert, it had to be so severe. Blindness is severe. It had to be so severe as to be something like this. How does that song go? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. His blindness he's speaking of there is being completely unaware of spiritual light. And of course, the irony must be evident to many of you. While my eyes worked to transmit physical light, my heart absolutely had the veil across it. And when this affliction came at the eyes, it led to a search for, where's the light? Is there light in this matter? And the search ended up resulting in light, heart light. If you don't know light exists, you're not following the light. You don't even have a thirst for the light. What do you mean light? You know, I can speak now as a blind man concerning physical light. This is what you and I are like, talking to someone who's blind in spirit. Catch them when they're in an affliction, and you'll catch them when their soil is fertile, because affliction is how many of us wake up. Today, the Lord has a ministry in me. I don't say I have a ministry. I say he has a ministry in me. I speak a word of encouragement, the gospel, to men at the Detroit Rescue Mission on a regular basis. I have been doing it for years now. I never imagined how I could stand up in front of people, a room full of people, and speak to them out of the Bible. It's so much more than just religion, which allows you just to go through the motions. There's much more than that. So I speak the word now, and I'm up there not stammering, and it is so gratifying. I mean it all the time. There is a really crushing aspect to being in the dark all the time. And I also see it this way in a funny way. Blindness is something that is to be dealt with, from my point of view, every day. By his wounds, you really know that your wounds have been healed.